Hello, food and beverage and tech enthusiasts. Welcome to an exciting episode of the FoodTech Innovators Podcast, where we'll explore the transformative impact of technology and success stories in the world of food and beverage manufacturing. I'm your host, Steven Burton, and I'm sitting down with Alain Guez to talk about IoT in the food industry. All right, so welcome to the podcast. We've known each other for quite a while, Alain, but I haven't had the opportunity to interview you before, so it's really great to have you here. You can actually start out by telling me a little bit about your company, and I know you have a kind of an interesting family history behind it as well, and how you're really trying to conquer the new world with essentially European technologies. So maybe give us a little bit of that.
Thank you, Steven, and very pleased to be here today. Yes, so Alain Guez, head of ES Canada, es-canada.com. That's our website. We are a distributor, a value-added distributor of IoT products, doing that initially in France for many years before, and over 20 years in France of environmental test and measurement product, and in Canada for the last 3 years with a focus on IoT, sensor deployment, integration with partners like Icicle, where we can export the data and analysis of the data. And we are doing that here in Canada and based out of Vancouver. Somebody told me, if you're selling IoT, you should have a conversation with Steven from Icicle. That's really how we connected. And with what we're doing today with Steven on the integration with partner, and especially here for the food industry with Icicle.
Okay, perhaps you can start out by telling us a little bit about what is IoT, like what the heck is that and why should we care?
Yeah, good question. So Internet of Things, right? That's the name. And if you go back about 5-10 years ago, people were saying everything in your life will be controlled, from your fridge to the car to any device. And obviously there is a lot of devices that are connected. And so what it is basically is, in our case, it's a sensor. IoT sensor are devices that collect data and send them through usually wireless technology to the internet and to a cloud or to some application. There is really two principles from a radio perspective. The focus here is to have a sensor that has a long time battery. You don't want to change the battery or have to charge it. So usually 5 to 10 years of battery that are able to be very easily moved around and are reliable. And so there is two technology. There is NB-IoT, Narrowband Internet of Things, which is really for elements or devices that will be moving around. So they bring the roaming and they can be moving in a car. And so it's great for checking or validation for example, asset tracking. And then there is LoRaWAN. We're really focusing on LoRaWAN. LoRaWAN allow you on a specific, let's say one factory, have many sensor, 1 or 2 elements to send that to the internet, 7 to 10 years battery life span, and very easy to deploy and cost effective.
So when you're talking about these devices with their astonishingly long battery life, that's really impressive, like 5 to 10 years. Wow, that's incredible that you guys can do that. But what kind of devices are they and what sort of things do they measure?
Oh yeah, so basically they are checking 1, 2, 3 environmental parameter. So we can talk about temperature, we can talk about detection, humidity, detection of movement, elements of sensor counting, for example, through some elements, something happening in the area. So there is a lot of different sensor really checking a lot of different parameter. We've been seeing a lot in other industry. For example, there is a soil sensor in agriculture, humidity, temperature, outdoor element like wind. So anything that you want to check an environmental parameter, basically there is a sensor that can do that. In the food industry, we really been seeing humidity and temperature.
Excellent. I know that I spent about 5 years scouring the entire face of the earth looking for a particular kind of sensor, which Alain's finally delivered, which is tremendous. That's great. It's a portable probe sensor that you can use to measure the internal temperature of products with a readout on it. And it can send the information to our system, which is Icicle ERP. So in terms of the kind of use cases and clients that you've dealt with so recently. What would you say you've seen in terms of the effectiveness of the implementations? Are they generally pretty easy to do, pretty easy to get up and running, or is, do you see a significant portion of the projects sort of,
Yeah.
crash and burn?
No. I think with this technology, specifically with LoRaWAN, what we really like is that not only the battery can go for a long time, but also the radio is really able to go through many complex building compared to other technology like Wi-Fi, which is the band with here. We're working on the 800 to 900 band, which is very excellent for simplicity of deployment. So we don't really have to worry about, is the signal going to be good enough? It is, you can actually go outdoor up to a few kilometers, potentially 10 kilometers. So the fact that it's very reliable from a radio perspective, it's really the first part that it's helping. And then bringing the internet access to it through a gateway is usually not a problem. And then everything goes to the cloud through our partnership, and we capture the data in the cloud and then we integrate it and send it directly to Icicle. So we've done many projects, not only in the food industry. There is also a big trend right now in agriculture and outdoor environmental. I would say, unfortunately, global warming is not helping, or is helping the business, at least in the way that soil moisture, weather condition, crop health is very easy to monitor through this system, because obviously it's wireless and you can deploy them easily.
And do you see sort of businesses who adopt this technology seeing some sort of benefits from this? I imagine there are. So what kind of examples have you seen?
So a lot of data point that allow you to, after that, to analysis. So you can do analysis after the fact. You had an incident, you want to understand what happened, and then you can go back. And where potentially, let's say for temperature, you would have one temperature a day, or even less than that for a room or for a crop or field. Now you have, maybe 200 to 300 temperature points. So you can really deep dive and do the analysis in a better way. And then it can help you to have a better product overall, and you can have, for a limited investment, a high quality result in terms of quality of the product. You can also use the tool to do predictive analytics for potentially seeing if a problem is going to happen. And so predictive maintenance or avoiding unplanned downtime. So there is a lot of valuable elements you can do with all of this data.
And when you say predictive, are you talking really about artificial intelligence there?
Yeah, so that's the next step. Really, I think IoT in general, it's the fact that you are able, IoT sensor, you are able to have easily a lot of data points. You can also see that as helping people not to have to do manual tasks. So sometime in the past, if I look at the cook and chill process in the food industry, people usually take the probe and go and check the temperature of the end product, and they have to write it down on a piece of paper. So it takes time. It's not as reliable. So here everything is integrated. And if you still have to do manually, sometime putting the probe into the end product, all the data will be connecting and will be automatically pushed into the Icicle. Now, we've seen other part where really having a tool like that can help you to bring data with AI, helping you to analyze the data, because now you're having a lot of data points, right? So it's hard to do it without a tool. It will be harder because the correlation between all these parameters it may be too much for a human to do that. So that's why we're using machine learning and AI to really analyze all of these data points and see either problem in the past or predict what can happen in the future.
I know from our experiences using AI in Icicle, we need a sort of minimum critical mass of data before we can effectively use the analysis. How long do you need for your IoT? Is it like a week's worth of data is okay, or do you need a year's worth, or how much data should you be collecting in order to use these AI features?
Yeah, and I would say the AI feature is not always what people want to do initially. It comes with time. The first thing is having reliable data points. and having or optimizing the process and limiting the time, and being able also in terms of regulation to show that you have all of these data points. So the first reason is usually not the AI. The AI comes after some time when you have been capturing all of these data points and then you run it. So for sure, it will take maybe a month or two at least to begin to start some having enough data point to run the machine learning process.
So sorry, I didn't quite catch that in terms of how long
So
would you need to be collecting data?
A few months.
A few months at least. Okay. Okay. I know in the financial side of the world, sort of 12 to 14 months is sort of normal. It's great that if you can get off the ground even earlier than that with the sensors, that's really awesome. So if I was somebody who is, in the manufacturing business, my processes are typically mostly manual, and I'm looking to automate these things, using your technology and potentially connecting it to a software system like ours, what would be the first steps that you would recommend that somebody might take?
Yeah. So we like to say, it's easier to start small and to see the value. First of all, when we talk about the sensor and the technology behind it and the radio, people are kind of usually surprised. They may have had bad experience with other technology where the radio system didn't really work. We know in the food industry, there is a lot of fridges and a lot of complex metallic element that sometimes makes the radio aspect not working as much as we want. So start small, validating that, in your own environment, the radio is working very fine and the sensor can send all the data easily, and that's very reliable. And then from there, you can expand. And from maybe initially one process, let's say the cook and chill, you can also then add to that the validation of all your requirement when it comes to temperature monitoring, either for the room, the fridges, and then, add maybe potentially another element with the machine and do motion detection so we can see some pattern in the machine and potentially detect failure. So we see it as growing, and once you're confident that first the technology works, then you would add some different workflow.
Okay. Can you also do things like flow rates or wash water composition, chemical compositions, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the sky is the limit when you talk to a sensor. I mean, every electrochemical sensor, every sensor, I would say, have IoT LoRaWAN alternative. So anything you want to control, it goes to gas, from ambient air to gas detection. Most of the gas can be analyzed, but also water content or chemical content. So for sure, there is about, I would say 500 different sensors existing in the market. I'm not talking about brand, I'm talking about different elements that it can sense.
Okay, and if I'm thinking about doing this in my facility, do I need to have like a large IT team to manage all of this, and or is it something that's sort of achievable, both in terms of kind of skill sets and the financial aspects? Is it suitable for small and medium-sized companies, or do you have to be pretty big to consider?
No, really, and I think we like this approach because really it's leveling the playing field. Everybody could deploy this kind of technology. There is no cost for the infrastructure. I mean, gateways are a few $1,000s, and then every sensor are in the $100 to $1,000. So really not a lot to invest initially. And all of the data goes to the cloud and then finally go to Icicle. So there is nothing in terms of infrastructure. There is no network. It's wireless. There is no servers to install locally. So it's really one or two gateway and the sensor that talks through the radio. So everyone could at least try. Initially, the initial costs are very limited. And so it's cost saving after that because you can see easily the value and the ROI that you can bring.
So on the ROI side, we were talking a bit about the costs, which seem to be quite reasonable. What are you saving, or how are you making extra money by implementing these technologies?
Yeah, so labor time is usually the first saving. So people either they don't have to do the task anymore because it's automatically done through the system, or the fact that they do it, they don't have to write it down after. So for temperature, so they're saving time. They do things faster than they used to do. Then when it comes to prediction or predictive analysis, analytics, predictive analysis of a problem of a machine. That will be a lot of saving if you don't have, you can limit the downtime. You can also find saving in the fact that the operational cost for your services can be reduced. So there is multiple elements of saving you can do. The main one again being labor, also inventory. You can optimize your inventory because now you can control and measure inventory at some level that you didn't do before. So you can really optimize your supply chain by that.
Yeah, I do see some different places where our clientele will use, IoT. One of the big ones is there's regulatory requirements. So for anything that's related to your HACCP program, which is your food safety program, sometimes you have to measure things to make sure, for example, that your refrigeration system or freezer is within a certain range, and if it goes outside, you have to take steps to correct that. Mm-hmm. So when an auditor comes in, they'll look at that and they want to see a continuous stream of data. So if at any point along the way there's a hole in the data, the inspectors really hate that. They'll dig you for that. So sometimes people forget to write things down. They forget to enter it into systems. So that's a big benefit that we've seen from our clientele in the ERP and software side.
Exactly. And I think, regulation, it's maybe harder to say in terms of ROI, because this is something you have to do. So how do you justify, or can you put a number in ROI? But what we know is that you can, one, save time, because what somebody was doing every day, twice a day potentially, now they don't have to do it anymore. And also bring you more reliable data. As you said, the machine will not stop for taking the data when it has to be. And so you can really have more reliable data that if it's only someone doing it. So when the regulator comes, when there is inspection auditor, you can show graph, and they're usually very appreciative to see that you have put in place some technology here.
Yeah, and it's really critical sometimes too. Like we had a client who actually had a temperature-related outbreak of foodborne illness, and unfortunately, it was Listeria bacteria that had gotten into their process, and they killed one person, one of their customers, and 5 others were in critical condition in the hospital, and it was all caused by losing control of their temperature. So if you had a system that would alert them to that, a life could have been saved in that particular case. It's quite sad, really.
Sure. And another part is, for some people I know, we have also a smaller scale organization that close overnight or over the weekend. The peace of mind of knowing that the fridge is still working perfectly, and you can check online, all the data are available online. So that's also one of the reasons management wanted to deploy this kind of technology, just to think that, I know that right now all of my inventory is safe, because I know that despite having, let's say, some electrical problem in the neighborhood, I can check that the fridge is working properly.
Yeah, I think that could actually lead to a change in the regulatory regime too, which I don't think is on anybody's radar yet. But right now the inspectors are sort of looking for a contiguous record. But if you have an effective IoT system, particularly one that utilizes AI to do its analysis, you don't actually really need to have a contiguous record, but you only need to know when anomalies occur. Yeah. But it requires a level of trust that I don't think the regulatory authorities have yet. But hopefully at one point you won't need to have that contiguous record if you can prove that you can reliably report on anomalies.
Right. That's a valid point. And obviously through our integration with Icicle, you can also create some automatic alerts. Right. So if something happened, you know it right away, and you don't have to wait. So an alert can be sent by mail or text message, and then some action can be done. So that's also part of the big saving in terms of, let's say, inventory, for example.
Yeah, we actually deal with that by having sort of 2 levels of alerts. So we have, critical alerts that if those occur, there's some sort of a deviation or nonconformity that's happened. But before it gets to the critical level, it's nice to to get an operational alert to say, okay, there's something kind of moving in the wrong direction. So we'll have multiple levels of alerts for that particular reason.
Yeah.
So, if I was somebody who's in the business, I have this production facility, but I'm sort of hesitant to take the plunge to sort of move into the whole IoT AI part of the world? Like, what kind of advice would you give to people to allay their fears in that regard?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think we like to start small. We will, assess the needs and the goal and identify what problem they want to solve or what process they do today that are either time consuming or that they are not very sure on the result and the reliability. So after that, the fact that we already have the integration with Icicle make it easier because we can organize a small pilot where they would have some product and right away they would see the data popping up on their Icicle dashboard. So we wouldn't have to have a long process for the integration. It's already there. And so then we could work after some first phase on developing a data management strategy. So what can we do with all of these new data points? And that's where we would help on the AI and bring the deployment to the next level. There is the selection of the sensor. We have a few products in our catalog of sensor. We can also reach out and connect with, it's a standard, the LoRaWAN is a standard, so we could also, for specific need, bring new sensor and integrate them very easily.
Okay, and the new sensors, like different technologies you're talking about?
Yeah. So let's say, somebody asking for some chemical element in the water, and that's not a sensor that we have today installed already, or it's not part of our regular supplier of sensor. We really work with some European company that have very neat product, but they don't have everything. So we could, source and validate a new sensor. And because they all use the LoRaWAN radio protocol, we know that it will be compatible with our infrastructure.
Like I know in certain industries, like medical space, for example, you have to have certain sort of certifications. Is that for certain medical devices? Is that true for IoT devices as well? Or is it pretty much you could use whatever you'd like?
Yeah, I would say the healthcare is definitely regulated, and there is healthcare IoT product. When it comes to the food industry, we're not aware of any specific HACCP or certification. One thing we know is the calibration is essential. So our tools are easy, especially the one with a display, a local display, are easy to recalibrate with your existing partner. Let's say you have a company that you are using, a food processor would be using to calibrate of their thermometer. We would add this new sensor to the process.
Okay, that's great. And what about what kind of people are typically involved in the decision-making process here? Do you need engineers? You have to accountants?
Even if it's IoT, there is internet in it, right? So I would say the networking or the IT part is very minimum. We usually just validate that, people accept the fact that now there is a new wireless technology on site, and they understand quickly that it's very secure and it can only go to one cloud. So there is a bit of IoT or internet or networking people or IT people, but really I think it's the management people who are in charge of the workflow. And they know, and it usually also goes to the management in terms of ROI. Like, it doesn't make sense from a financial perspective. What do we gain from that? Higher quality, safer from a HACCP perspective. But our contact are usually the operational people.
And if somebody's interested in sort of following up with you and seeing, what kind of wares you have to offer, how would they get a hold of you?
I'll give you my email, Alain, ALAIN, at es-canada.com. So ES-Canada, it stands for Équipement Scientifique. That's our name, historical name in France. We operate this service in Canada for the last 3 years. And I'll be happy to connect with them and show them and organize maybe even a free demo or a pilot. We could easily send them a few sensors and they could see and deploy themselves and see how easy it is to install.
Okay. And we'll put your contact information at the link below as well. Does your solution work with Quebec French as well, or do you have to be from France only?
all over Canada and all over different French, but at the end, very much the same. We also, we do have the integration again with Icicle, so it's easy to push, but we also potentially have a dashboard if people want to check the data intermediary or directly. And so the interface is in multiple languages.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm very thankful first, again, Steven, for giving us this opportunity. And we'll be happy to help any customer who want to try the IoT or bringing more sensor and at least discover what they can do. And I'm sure they'll be intrigued and surprised to see how easy it is to deploy and how much more data they can bring to them. And with AI, how much more decision they can take with valued information.
Okay, I can also add one thing myself, which is that kind of as we're moving forward in the food industry, where the margins are very thin, companies struggle to maintain a reasonable amount of profits, and I think the kind of level of efficiency that you give people is a huge benefit and a huge boost. And I would encourage people to try to automate as much as possible. And one of the things that I've learned traveling all over the world, talking to all kinds of companies, seeing all kinds of facilities, is that there's usually not kind of one solution that does everything. You need to have kind of a community. So having you on the IoT side has been a tremendous boost for us. So very grateful to have you as part of our supplier chain.
Thank you very much.
Okay, take care.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the FoodTech Innovators Podcast. We hope that you found today's discussion informative and inspiring. If you have any specific topics or questions you'd like us to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out through social media or email info@icicletechnologies.com. Thanks again, and see you at the next episode of the FoodTech Innovators Podcast.